Awesome. Well, why don't I dive in? Why don't I do my section? As I said, we're talking about Certain Dark Things, which was first published in 2016, so not too long ago, but so thankful that it exists. And it is a pulse-pounding neo-noir that reimagines vampire lore, and it's about welcome to Mexico City, an oasis in a sea of vampires. Domingo, a lonely garbage-collecting street kid, is just trying to survive its heavily policed streets when a jaded vampire on the run swoops into his life. Adol, the descendant of Aztec blood drinkers, is smart, beautiful, and dangerous. Domingo is mesmerized. And it is written by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Duh. Like I said before, my favorite book of hers is Gods of Jade and Shadow. Certain Dark Things, but every single one, I'm like, I can't really compare any of them because they're all so unique. But this is I really did enjoy and love this book for it being so unique. And I'm jealous of any young person who gets to read this instead of Twilight.
Yeah, so real.
You will benefit from a more true vision of what love and loving a vampire would be too.
Yeah, characters with personalities and stories that make you interested in who they are as people.
Yeah, and it's not just
shells.
I'm a predator.
People. Yeah, right.
Love me and a predator. Kill yourself if we're not in love. That's not how that works. And this is all this is what real world is like. So in Certain Dark Things, which is named for the line in a Pablo Neruda poem, I love you as certain dark things are loved. Love that line. We get a glimpse of Mexico City that is honest and complicated, full of death that we often reserve for cities like New York or LA, and maybe even Paris and London. Writer Amal El-Motar, which I mentioned in last week's episode, said of this Mexico, one of Silvia Moreno-Garcia's great achievements in Certain Dark Things is her representation of Mexico City as a real place, a city with history, districts, subways, with beauty and ugliness, with problems. And also in that article mentions that kind of seeing it from not its proximity to America, right? But its proximity to South America, right? And kind of highlighting the glory of that. And so in this very real neo-noir alternate universe Mexico City, there are vampires. And these vampires are born, not made, which I was like, what? As soon as that's because there's a point where someone's about to get drunk by a vampire and he's like, am I going to get changed? What's going on?
Yeah, do I get to be?
She's like, no, we are born. Which changes, it absolutely changes what they are from this predator monster to just another race, right? And they differ drastically, greatly impacted by their place of origin, which I was like, this is it. This is the best vampire book I've ever read. The story follows a few colorful characters, both vampires and humans. So we have Atol, who's a Mexican vampire whose species are bird-like, inspired by Aztec gods, of which they are named after. Hers is the god of water, moving water, something like that, Atoloa. And her sister's name, and when they kind of described her as being bird-like, I was like, that is so cool. And one thing about the way that she envisions this blend of culture and the supernatural is I'm currently working on a script where I'm trying to do that. And so I was seeing this, I was like, oh, look at what you can do.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. There's also Domingo, who is a young street boy who gets by sifting through trash and becomes a companion for Adol. There's Anna Aguirre, who is a detective skilled at hunting vampires but tired of doing it and has sought refuge in the vampire-free Mexico City. Nick is the son of the leader of the Necros, which is a villainous race of colonizer vampires, not subtle at all, and he is hunting Adol. Flat out is they're the colonizer vampires. Let me tell you how awful they are. I was like, girl,
Nick is the worst.
These Necros are disgusting. And I was like, Aren't they?
Yeah.
Nick's family's Renfield, which is the human familiar, and they are named after the character in Dracula, Renfield, who like
Mm.
helps Dracula. And Rodrigo is sent on this mission to find Atul and bring her back alive to Nick's father, Mr. Godoy. And then there's Bernardino, who is a vampire from the Revenant species. They're like a Nosferatu hunchbacked race that can give and take life from anyone, even other vampires.
That
So
was
cool.
so fascinating. I
Everything
want
about
to just know more about revenants too, just because it was crazy.
Yeah, I want to like, yeah, I want to see every one of these. And there has to be more because like later I'm going to talk about like the fact that Atul can be in the sun a little bit and
Yeah.
it's more or less because she has like some melanin in her. So I was like, what about black vampires? Like what about like African vampires and them mixed up with their gods and lore? Like I was like, there's so much more that we could be going
Hmm.
through. Like it just opens up the world for possibility based on like where you are geographically and like your culture and your history and like oh man.
Yeah. And I
Um,
agree, it would be totally great on screen. Like, I feel like a lot of the stuff you'd be like, wow, that witnessing the giving of life and death. Uh, and a lot of the fight scenes would just be
yeah,
bonkers, but really cool.
yeah, it's very, and it's also like the neo-noir as like aesthetic is so fun and people really love that, like to get that like grimy like in Mexico City that's like neon lights everywhere and so cool. If we could have oh my gosh, what is that show? Altered Carbon.
Mm,
Like we could have certain dark things.
yeah.
We can make it
I
happen.
mean, who knows? Maybe it'll get there. We'll see.
Yeah, let's make
Time will
all
tell.
people make all her things. In
Yeah.
certain dark things, Atul is on the run after committing a horrible offense, murdering a vampire's wife and others. Spoiler alert. Spoilers.
What?
You should know. This show's full of spoilers. Her own family has been savagely murdered. Their powerful reign in Mexico wiped out quickly. And Atul is from the. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna try very hard to say this Mexican word. Uh, Tlahuapalchi, species of vampires, which is inspired by Aztec gods. And she has
Hmm.
stopped in the vampire free Mexico City to connect with an old family friend of her mother's, Elisa, so that she can get papers to travel further south and into safety. Presumably safety. She is being pursued by Rodrigo and Nick of the Necros clan, and Atul encounters the young and sweet Domingo on the subway, invites him to her home, where she later asks him if she can drink him,
Hmm.
which happens. He's like, "Oh, I get to go to your house. Like, are we
He's
gonna
like,
have some
yeah.
fun? We're gonna hook up."
Drink me. What does that mean?
He's like,
100%.
"Absolutely. You are so pretty. I can't believe you're talking to me." And
Yeah.
he's
I
so
love
sweet.
Domingo. Such a sweet boy.
Oh my god. I was like, if I had read this book before I got my cat O'Malley, he would have been named
Mm,
Domingo after him. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, there are human gangs who'd like to keep Mexico City vampire free. One gang in particular, the Deep Crimson, hires skilled vampire huntress detective Anna to find and kill both Atul and Nick. And what follows is a deadly chase, emotional explorations, and a study in Mexican colonization history,
mhm,
which, you know, Silvia Moreno-Garcia is so talented at doing.
mhm,
Each of these characters, as we've been saying this whole time, is so profoundly written with depth and honest motivations. And my heart ached for, like, specifically the simple and sweet boy Domingo. Like, he's so sweet. And he falls in love with Adel because who wouldn't? And through his
mhm.
limited lens of the world, attempts to protect her. Like, it's just like, she's a vampire. She is so much more powerful than him. She can destroy him and like completely ruin him. And he's caught up in her world that's so dangerous. And the entire time he is always innocent and just like pure. Like he's just like, there's good and there's bad, and I want to say help. You're
Mhm.
like, okay. And it would be so easy to rate him as like just a lovesick pup who quickly disrobes himself of his morals to best serve Atul. Like that's generally what we see a lot with like vampire romance is like you
Mhm.
kind of turn the human a little evil. Or not evil, but
Yeah, or
like,
you, like, lose yourself, like, you're not you anymore. You are,
yeah.
like
You have to like
yeah.
turn off certain parts of yourself to be able to like still see them as lovable and worthy
Mhm.
of love. because they're gonna commit terrible acts. So a lot
Yeah.
of the times you have to be like, oh, they do all these wonderful things, like, and they murdered all those people. And I just really, like, you just
Yeah.
kind of like shrug it off. I was like, oh, but they bring me tea when my stomach hurts. Like,
Yeah. And then she ate that guy.
yeah,
It's hard. It's hard.
Vampire Diaries, looking at
Yeah.
you. But what I really loved about Domingo is that he stays true to his integrity and care. Um, like a lot of characters are like, you're gonna lose that. They're like, this is gonna happen to you, and he never does. He
Mhm.
stays true to himself and his morals the entire time. And his understanding of the world is through the lens of film, books, and pieces of the world that he picks up along the way in subway carts and in the trash that he sorts through. Atul, like, kind of teases him a bit about the fact that he's
Mhm.
always comparing like their adventures or what's going on to Dracula or Night of the Living Dead or something, like all these things that he has just consumed because that's his whole life. It's just like
Mhm.
reading and getting these minor escapes so that he can keep just surviving through like a very dark and like sad world. Like it's not very
Mhm.
hopeful inspiring where he lives and what he does. But he again is still sweet despite all that.
Yeah.
Like it hasn't turned him. Like he even like his like he explains in one story that like his girlfriend left him for like this like gang leader, and he's just like, but I understand why she did that. Like he's not even hard up on her. Like he's like he's like,
Yeah.
I understand why she picked him. I tried, but good for
He just has
her.
like a
Don't
good
kill
heart.
her.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
Um,
heart.
simply pure, honestly. And Silvia Moreno Garcia allows us to see each character individually, giving us intimate moments with them to learn of their motivations and decisions, leading to the events of the book, so that everyone's kind of is pretty much fully fleshed out. So you know what they're doing
Mhm.
here, but you know like how they got here and why they would react the way that they do. Um,
Mhm.
and it's easy to feel for them, except for Nick, because screw Nick.
Nick is awful.
Except for Nick. And probably his dad. We don't really get
Yeah.
to see Mr. Godoy, but F him too. Detective Anna, though a skilled vampire hunter, is also simply a single mother who yearns to protect her daughter. Like, it's not like simply a single, but like that's a big deal. But I mean, like, that's her core. That's like her motivation for everything. And it's to give her daughter a life that she never had and to escape poverty and just like survive. So
Yeah.
you're like, I ain't even mad at you. Um,
Yeah, no, that's real.
yeah, and even Rodrigo, who's found himself in the snare of Mr. Godoy, is somewhat forgivable and understandable. Like you kind of see, like he doesn't want to be doing this, but you get caught
Yeah.
up and you're stuck now, and you don't have
Mhm.
like you are just a person, and they are a supernatural force that could just undo you for,
Mhm.
and it will like poor guy. So, one of my favorite pieces of Moreno Garcia's alternate world are the different races of the vampires, as we mentioned. And they are inspired by their origin locations and were very exciting and inventive. Everything about the vampire races is different from the way they consume blood, or if they do at all, their effect on humans, and their physical appearance. Atol's people are akin to gods. It is such a refreshing imagining of vampires. These ones are bird like with sharp features, wings, an affinity for sugar, and a proboscis.
Mhm.
Again, spoilers. And I was like, what? Atul
Yeah.
cannot eat human food or she'll be sick, but she's graced with melanin, so she can venture into the sun, though it will make her tired and eventually take a toll on her well being. But I was like, that's dope. Like a good
Mhm.
explanation of like, of course they can go in the sun. That doesn't make any sense that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
um, then you have the Necros, which are a sickly, disgusting race of vampires that are literally the colonizers of Mexico. They are a walking STD. It's so funny. Having sex or exchanging of any fluids with a necros spells death for humans and even some vampires. Necros are pale and beautiful. They lure their prey in, and by feeding their victim their blood, they can control their actions and hear their thoughts. They burn
Mhm.
up in the sun, not like traditional vampires into pillars of ash, but they get boils and burns, which is a major downer for these very vain vamps.
Mhm.
Uh,
Like my precious face.
my beautiful face. Ew. When she was like, having sex with them, you will die. And I was like, she made the colonizers an STD. Like she just
Yeah.
flat out was like, they are gross.
Yeah.
No, like they are bad. They are bad for everyone. And I was like, wow, yeah, you're right. Then there's the revenants, which we see in Bernardino, who are an older species of vampires, and they have telltale hunchbacks and thin, translucent skin. And revenants don't simply drink blood, but consume life energy. They can shave off years of your life or give you more.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned earlier, they can drink from humans and vampires. And Bernardino is like something to be feared, but also like a sympathetic character because he's been,
Yeah.
and also like I love he was like obsessed with cats and like
Yeah.
there's so much about it. I was like, I love this man, like this old
He's very interesting.
Nosferatu.
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm serious, whatever. He was great. And every single one is like so like every time they introduce another one, it's like there's more though. Like, because this is just what's
Mm-hmm.
here in the vampire-free Mexico City, where
Yeah.
like
What are the vampire filled places like?
yeah, what are they like? One of the other themes in the novel is actually of war. And for Atul and Nick, their families are at odds in a drug war specifically, and because it takes place in Mexico City, makes a lot of sense. Atul's family had run the drug trade well for generations in Mexico, supplying goods to both humans and vampires. And Nick's family, seeking to grab hold of the market, murders Atul's mother. Um, in retaliation, Atul murders Mr. Godoy's wife and others, and then in further retaliation, Atul's family is wiped out, leaving her on the run.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what is happening in this book, right? But there's another war afoot as well, that of humans versus vampires. And in Mexico City, Deep Crimson runs the drug trade, and they won't tolerate vampire drug lords on their turf. So they want to get rid
Mm-hmm.
of both of them. And as we saw in Tigers Are Not Afraid, the drug wars and dangers of Mexico City can be easily transformed into mythical beasts, the horrors feeling so monumentally insurmountable.
Mm-hmm.
They essentially become a creature all on their own, because the people, like both vampires and humans, are afraid of
Yeah.
these monsters like that are separate from the fact that like vampires are monsters. It's like, no, but these are like the drug lord vampires. So they're
Mm-hmm.
worse. Like they revenants just hanging out. He'd been here this whole time, not doing nothing, just collecting cats, right? But
Yeah.
then as soon as the Necros and I'm not gonna say the word it's very long, Atos people come in, now it's a problem. Now you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
bring in other monsters. And then the Deep Crimson are also monstrous. Like they're just people, but
Yeah.
they were also a villain. So essentially, there is honestly too much to love and appreciate about certain dark things. And as always with a Moreno-Garcia novel, I am both entertained and educated. I absolutely love fantastical works that highlight the real world, and to have these monsters with motivations, not just for monsters' sake, like not just to have a vampire in the story. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
vampires are bad, like, but for why?
Yeah.
I wish more vampire werewolf supernatural lore was like this, with a world robust in history and influence that was more strategic and less Western in its
Yeah.
lens. Um, Certain dark things made vampires believable to me, understood geographically and racially. Like we saw with like fifth season, where I was like, I know we can't be earthbenders. I know that. But I also think we could
Yeah. Because like
because
this seems legit.
that like if earthbenders did exist, this is what they would look like, right? And if
Yeah.
vampires did exist, this is what they would look like
Yeah.
that just makes sense to me. And so I'm like, we need more of that. So again, with Moreno Garcia, you never know what exactly to expect, but you do know you'll enjoy the ride. And this tale, like all her others, will be rich in storytelling, character explorations, and the lands that they inhabit.
Yeah. It was super interesting. And I just so many moments where like the character development was just for such like a not super long book, it achieves so much. Like even just like kind of how when we read that one book with Girl with All the Gifts, we didn't read it, but we watched the movie. Where it's just like
Mhm.
even just like a line can give characters so much depth. And there were like minutes of that where it was like we are our hunger and then having them,
Mhm.
still like rise to just have like moments where you're like, wow, okay, so like these characters are depth filled, like they have unique motivations that like even by the end of the book you don't even fully get, but you respect, and you're like, I wish there was more. And then you're just sitting there like, dang, there ain't though.
Yeah. I feel like it was a good introduction, and as action paced and like fast paced as it was, like it would have been a
Mm-hmm.
really even just a fun action movie. But I
Yeah.
feel like if it's one of those cases where I get a glimpse into the world and I'm like, where's the rest of it? Where's the rest of the world?
Yeah. And I mean, it's also like a kudos to Silvia Moreno-Garcia, because like she wrote this one book like as a one-off. It's not like a series, right? Like there's not other
Hmm.
ones to our
Yeah,
knowledge, at
just
least
one
not
off.
yet. I know it was like published somewhat recently, so I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll get back into it. Um, but yeah, like it's just the writing style that really just kind of gets you enthralled in everything that's happening. I'm really excited to read more of their stuff. I know we're going to read Mexican Gothic, but I am excited to like read other things just because she has a
Yeah.
really interesting style.
Yeah, and we're gonna cover Mexican Gothic in October when we discover Gothic horror, because that's gonna be really
Hmm.
fun. Such a good topic for horror, October. But yeah, like I said, everyone is so unique, and this one was just like really fun. It's really quick too, so go read it. Like just go read it,
Yeah.
and then like hop back in here and watch this. But yeah, it's super quick, very entertaining. You're gonna care about these characters, and then they're gone, and you're sad because the book is done, and you're like, but what else, Sylvia?
Yeah.
What
Well,
else?
the bright side is she's 41, so lots more time to be writing a bunch of books. So who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe we'll get a follow up some point down the line, or maybe
Hmm.
there'll just be more vampire times because she just has a really awesome perspective on vampires. Like who knows? Maybe we'll get that one that you just said, like where it's like other cultures even coming in, like the melanin part coming in and like really
Hmm.
expanding on that, and
Yeah.
maybe more cats and revenants, and super interesting. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think yeah, and even if there was like a show where you can
Mm-hmm.
expand on that and you have like a team of writers, because then it's not just Sylvia, so that you could get that point of view of these different cultures, and it could be an honest point of view because it's from those people, right? Like if
Yeah,
you can have a writers
100%.
room
Yeah.
full of like diverse like writers talking and like creating these vampires like together would be so cool.
And I mean,
Um
considering her vibe, that's like very possible, I think. Like her
who
whole
loves
thing was like creating
collaboration.
spaces for other people to like get their stories out. So I could totally see that in the future. I mean, hopefully. Uh
Hmm.
hopefully they get into show writing. Because if like they can do this in such a short book, my God.
Yeah. Imagine what like her and like writing on a show, and then like NK comes in to like contribute and make her own race of vampire. I'd be like, it's broken. You broke the world. You've broken me and my
Yeah.
brain.
That
Or
would
just
be
like
amazing.
there's so many like Afrofuturist writers or like fantasy and fiction writers out there who are making stories like that. Like I've read stories where, the because of the damage we've done to the environment, the sun is too harsh and people can't go outside except black people could go outside.
Mm-hmm.
Like those, like I've read these stories, and
Yeah.
so they're out there. Those writers are out there. So it's just, highlighting them. So I thank
Yeah, getting the
you,
space.
uh, Sylvia, for making this book, because I hope it inspires others to really kind of think outside the box and stop being content with just like this very basic understanding of vampires. And I think it's a good time to do that and blend like culture and history, and also
Mm-hmm.
inspire people to learn the way that we've learned, for sure.
Yeah. Open their minds, get whole new worlds, write everything. Never stop writing. All the books. And then we'll read them. And it'll be great.